At first glance, Trevor Ashby's farm near Mount Gambier, South Australia, might appear as just a typical farm on an ordinary strip of land. However, this seemingly ordinary place holds a remarkable secret. Many Australians would be stunned to learn about the otherworldly sight hidden deep beneath. A natural wonder described as the closest we can get to venturing into space without actually leaving Earth. Welcome to the Shaft, a bottomless pit of water that was an extremely popular dive site in the late 1960s and early 70s. It was first discovered in 1938 by Trevor Ashby's grandfather. While ploughing his field, one of his horses suddenly fell to the ground. He rushed to the horse's side, but to his surprise, the horse quickly regained its footing and seemed unhurt. He looked down and noticed a small hole, barely a foot in diameter. Dropping to his hands and knees to inspect it more closely, what he saw took his breath away. A vast expanse of crystal clear water glimmering far below the surface. Excited by his discovery, he hurried back to the house, retrieved the long rope with a weight attached, and carefully lowered it into the hole. The rope descended past 10 foot, then 20 foot, 30 foot, and continued deeper. When the weight finally touched the bottom, it had reached an astonishing depth of 140 foot. The farmer couldn't believe the depth of this random hole on his land. Little did he know, the true depth and complexity of the cave system beneath him were far more astonishing than he ever could have imagined. The farmer told his neighbours about his discovery, and word quickly spread throughout Mount Gambier. People were eager to see the hole for themselves. The farmer decided to widen the hole for a better view. But this would be the limit of exploration for most people, until a man called Ron Miller arrived and took it upon himself to be the first to descend into the shaft. Using a homemade harness, Miller carefully climbed down the entrance, now widened to about 2.6 foot in diameter. He emerged into a stunning 17-meter wide lake chamber and made the first known dive to a depth of approximately 69 foot. But this was only the beginning, and further exploration by other divers would reveal the true extent of this underwater wonder. Descending down into the huge chamber feels like spacewalking. Staying within the center, you're illuminated by natural light streaming through the tight entrance above. Venturing away from this central area, however, plunges you into total darkness. At 118 foot, you encounter a rock formation known as the rock pile, a key reference point for divers. The rock pile marks the boundary for safe recreational diving. Beyond this point, the cavern becomes dark, unexplored, covered in loose silt and limestone rubble. The tunnels extending downward descend to depths where the effects of nitrogen narcosis can become extreme if diving with normal air. Additionally, the tunnels present countless hazards, including misleading passageways on the cave's roofs, which can easily trick divers into dead ends. Some passages require squeezing through tight spaces, often covered in silt. Disturbing the silt on these walls can reduce visibility to zero, making it nearly impossible to find your way back. Despite these dangers, the shaft was an extremely popular dive site, attracting thousands of divers drawn to its unique underwater landscape. However, in 1973, one particular dive would go horrifyingly wrong. On the morning of May 26, 1973, a group of 9 divers arrived at the remote sinkhole known as the Shaft. The excited group of divers consisted of John, Peter, Larry, Gordon, Robert, Joanne, Christine, Glenn, and Stephen. Christine, Glenn, and Stephen were siblings, and the rest were close friends, united by their passion for diving. The plan was to descend to the rock pile and head to the eastern tunnel, which led to another feature known as the ledge, a steep drop leading further into the dark passage. Beyond the ledge was an exceptionally dangerous area, off limits to most divers. Despite their enthusiasm, the group made critical mistakes even before entering the water. They were experienced in open water, but had little to no experience in cave diving. Additionally, their tanks contained oxygen instead of the recommended trimix, virtually guaranteeing that they would feel the effects of nitrogen narcosis. 8 out of the 9 divers descended into the cave, while the 9th remained at the shaft entrance to cook soup for the returning divers to eat and warm up. The descent to the rock pile didn't take long, and soon after they made their way to the ledge. all 8 divers peered over the edge, fascinated by what lay deeper in the cave. They took pictures and enjoyed the breathtaking view. After a while, 2 of the divers, Peter and Gordon, decided they wanted to return. They were probably the most experienced of all the divers, and they could feel the effects of nitrogen narcosis setting in. Soon after, one of the divers, Glenn, after looking at his pressure gauge, noticed that he was fairly low on air, and everyone else should be at about the same amount, indicating that it was time to leave. But before he could reach out to alert his siblings and the other divers, every single one of them had jumped straight off the ledge and started descending deeper into the most dangerous section of the cave. Glenn was left there in shock. This was not part of the plan. He attempted to follow them over the ledge, but they had caused so much silt on their way down that Glenn was almost completely blinded and he had to turn around. Glenn got back to the ledge and tried to rationalize what was happening. He told himself that surely they all know what they are doing, and this must have been something that they planned to do. Glenn headed back to the rock pile to wait for his siblings and friends, but they never came, and eventually he had to surface alone. Meanwhile, the 5 divers who ventured off the ledge intended to explore just a little further. The cave quickly shrunk into an extremely tight passage, and they soon realized their mistake. They turned around, but to their horror, their exit was completely silted out. But with nowhere else to go, the divers had no choice but to go back the way they came, straight through the blinding silt. Larry was the first one inside the tight passage, so he was the last one on the return journey. He was following the bright yellow fin of another diver that he could just about see through the silt. But after just a few moments, he lost sight of the yellow fin, and Larry had to find his own way out. He continued in the same direction, convinced it was the right way. Eventually, he would emerge from the silt and safely got back to the ledge, only to find himself completely alone. In the distance, he could see 2 divers. It was Christine and Robert. They were much higher up from the tunnel exit, in the completely wrong place. Instead of ascending slowly up the slope, the 2 divers had ascended far too quickly and gotten stuck inside a dome-like room. Despite his dwindling air supply, Larry headed straight back over the ledge and into the silty tunnel, hoping to be able to guide the other divers to safety. Larry knew he had to get their attention, but as he went to shine his flashlight, it went dead, plunging him into total darkness. Frantically shaking and hitting his torch, it eventually came back on, but by then he had drifted further down into the tunnel, at which point he saw another diver. It was John. He was swimming the wrong way, likely suffering from nitrogen narcosis. John mistook the deeper areas for the exit in his panic and confusion. Larry knew there was nothing he could do for John. He didn't have enough air to follow him. Turning back, Larry navigated through the silty passage, over the ledge and back to the rock pile, where he grabbed the shot line and descended. When Larry surfaced, only 3 other divers were there, including Glenn. When Glenn saw Larry was alone, he began frantically asking about his siblings. He took what little air he had left and descended again into the shaft. He waited at the rock pile, hoping to see them, but they never came. The recovery efforts were painstaking, requiring careful navigation of the silted and treacherous cave system. It took over 11 months to locate and recover all of the bodies. Stephen was found first, very close to the entrance of the cave. Christine and Robert were found embracing each other inside the false stone, and John was found last in a much deeper section of the cave. Despite the sorrow and grief, the diving community came together to honour the memories of those lost. Memorials were held, and the stories of their courage and adventurous spirit were shared widely. The deaths at Mount Gambier should serve as a reminder that open water diving and cave diving are completely different things. Everything you think you know about diving goes completely out the window when you're inside a cave. These places, although stunningly beautiful, are unforgiving in their nature. After all, this is an extreme sport that has and will continue to take the lives of the most exceptional cave divers. Thank you so much for watching, and if you did enjoy the video, hit that subscribe button, as I'd really love to reach 1k. But, until the next true disaster, it's goodbye from me.